Hello and welcome to the third Teachappy book club, and I'm delighted to share that this week's book club is focusing on Happiness by Design by Professor Paul Dolan. And Paul Dolan says that well-being isn't about what we think, it's about what we do. And I guess he takes this stance because he's a behavioural scientist at the London School of Economics. And what this means is he's looking at how our habits and behaviours affect our levels of happiness. So this book is all about kind of little quick ways of nudging us towards leading a happier life. And he gives a definition of happiness. He spends a whole chapter talking about what is happiness. And he uses this pleasure purpose principle. And he says that we are happiest when we find the balance between pleasure and purpose. And that's what he says happiness is. It's our experience of pleasure and purpose over time. And he makes it really clear in the book that, pleasure, experiencing positive emotions, enjoying ourselves, having fun. You can't always lead your life like that. You won't always experience pleasure because a crucial aspect of happiness is purpose. Purpose is about spending time on activities, on projects that are important and meaningful to us, but crucially aren't always fun, aren't always enjoyable. So, for example, raising children is extremely purposeful and important. It's not always fun, particularly if, like me, last night you had to get up in the middle of the night to kind of settle your 3-year-old back to sleep. So he says we're trying to get this balance right between enjoying our lives but also spending on time on things that are important, and it's a constant balancing act. Something that really resonated with me from this book, and I cited this in my two books, is he says that your happiness depends on what you pay attention to. And he says that enhancing happiness is as much about withdrawing our attention from the negative as it is about paying attention to the positive, the good things in our lives. And this is something I use in my own training, particularly with teachers, because research came out earlier this year by the What Works Centre for Wellbeing, showing that the thing that had the single biggest negative impact on our wellbeing was paying attention following COVID-19 related news. And so Paul Dolan would argue, we can take our attention away from things like the news. We can take our attention away if there's teacher bashing in the media, if we're on social media and there's, a bit of a pile-on and it's stressing us out, it's getting us down. We have that ability, we have that agency to take our attention elsewhere and place it on things that buoy us up, that give us energy, that make us feel good about being alive. And because our attention is so fundamental to our happiness, he says that we really need to be mindful of, be aware of what we're paying attention to, and notice how it's making us feel. Two key ways that this book has informed my teaching practice. One, he talks about priming in the book. Priming is a psychological phenomenon where you kind of prime someone or people to behave and act in certain ways on a subconscious level. He talks about in a book, there's studies that show that if you put citrus air freshener in the toilet in hospitals, it makes the doctors and nurses comply with hand hygiene regulations more strictly. Just because subconsciously the smell of citrus makes them think of cleanliness and makes them think, oh, I must wash my hands. So you can use this in the classroom and in schools. And he talks about the importance of nature, exposure and access to nature, because nature, there's good studies that show access or even just being able to see natural settings lowers our stress levels, helps us to concentrate better, can even make us feel healthier. So something that I've done in schools that I've worked in is bring plants into the classroom. Just have household plants that are easy to maintain, get the children to kind of water and look after them. And just having that kind of access to nature in our classroom is one way that I try and prime my students, my pupils, to feel calmer, more focused and healthier. The other thing is music. He talks about music in the book, and he says that music, when we listen to music that we enjoy, it most strongly activates parts of the brain associated with positive emotions and memory. So something that I've done when I've been teaching is when children come into my class in the morning is just have music playing. Nothing too loud and garish. My favourite piece is The Lark Ascending by Ralph Vaughan Williams, a nice piece of classical music that feels quite uplifting. But that's just one way that I use music to help my children come in feeling kind of uplifted, glad to be in the class and ready to learn. So I would highly recommend this book. It is packed with so much theory, research, practical ideas, small subtle ways that you can nudge yourself to leading a happier life. If you've read the book, let me know in the chat. If you're going to read it, let me know in the chat, and I hope you've enjoyed this Teachappy book club.